Welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Heather. Kim's here with me, and today is an episode that we know um, for families who are waiting to adopt. This may be a question that they kind of quietly wrestle with, maybe not so quietly, even if they're not saying it out loud.
hmm And that question is, why wouldn't she choose us?
Right. So,
hmm
families who are waiting to adopt, usually a newborn domestically, usually they have a profile that is shown to birth parents. And a birth mother, birth father, expectant mother, they're the ones who are choosing the families that they want, at least to start maybe with a phone call to talk to see if it's a good match for their baby. So you may have had your profile shown. You may have had it shown many times. Maybe you've even had a call with a mom and then you didn't get chosen. You know, that
Right.
that can sting.
hmm Absolutely. And I think it can sting in an unexpected way when people are excited to adopt. They're not necessarily prepared for the reality that this moment may happen.
Right.
And it can feel, personal. It can feel kind of like a rejection. It's like little it, it
Yes.
is technically a rejection, and so it feels that way. And it can be a little confusing as
Right.
well.
So today we want to talk about that. We don't
hmm
want to just explain it because I think we've kind of talked about that in the past, but really focus in to help families process this and maybe move forward seeing this from a different perspective. And maybe that will help as you continue on your adoption journey, really see those opportunities where you didn't get chosen, maybe see them from a little healthier way. Maybe to try to reduce that sting and bring some clarity to what it really means when you aren't the one that's chosen.
Yeah, not being chosen, even just saying that out loud, it just feels sad, you know? And I think it's important. I'm glad that we're talking about this and we're, saying this out loud on the Let's Talk Adoption podcast today because this moment in adoption can be one of those hard moments to get through.
Right, right. And for some people, it might be a throwback to, schoolyard days, when you
hmm
played games and there was, schoolyard picks, whether you played kickball or baseball and, someone picked teams and maybe you weren't the first one picked. You were more the last one picked for certain games. It can sometimes bring up similar feelings, especially after you've put your heart into your profile. You've taken pictures, you've written words, maybe you recorded a video, you've put so much into this. You've said yes to this journey, to this calling to adopt. You're doing your home study, you're showing up, you're taking care of everything that needs to be done. You're hoping, you're waiting. And then when you're not chosen, I think it is totally natural to wonder why.
hmm And what's wrong with us?
Definitely. And that's the part we really want to kind of dig into today and challenge because the truth of the matter is there's nothing wrong with you. It's almost never personal.
Right. Even though it is personal, it's not personal.
Right.
Like, how could
Right.
this not be personal, right? But it's not a personal rejection of you.
But it feels that way,
It feels that
you know?
way. It's really more from the birth mom's perspective, and I'm sure, we're going to get into that. But it
But
does, it feels so personal. And
right.
especially in that moment as you were sharing, you prepared everything. You're
Mhm.
probably one of those adoptive parents that has done everything you were told to do. Not only that, but even leading up to this point in your life, you're just people who do what you are supposed to do. And then the desired result doesn't happen in that moment and it feels like rejection. It feels personal and it can cause you to really question yourself.
Right. Because as you're saying that, Kim, from the adoptive parent side, they've done all the things, they've checked all the boxes, they've paid the fees. It is personal. You know, This is your life. This is your family. But, you have to kind of step back and see it from the expectant mom's side. She's making a personal decision too.
Mm-hmm.
And the decision she is making is different. And it is in such a different emotional space than where you are as a waiting family. You know, she's coming at this completely differently.
Right. And it's not about how amazing you are on paper or how easy you were to connect with over the phone. You know, she's not evaluating this like a job interview where in normal circumstances in your life you would have been a shoo-in, right? But she's not looking at it that way. She's not comparing your qualifications. She's assuming all adoptive parents are qualified, right?
Right.
And so she's not going through a list and checking boxes. Maybe she did have a list. And because you had an opportunity to talk with her, that's a good thing.
Hmm.
You probably met the things that a birth mother is looking for on her list, and that's why she wanted to have a phone call with you. I know, Heather, part of our matching process at Lifetime is that typically there is a scheduled phone or video call.
Hmm.
And so that's the moment we're talking about. And so you got to that point. That means there was something awesome about you in your profile. You did check all the boxes, and then it just it just wasn't that connection for her
Hmm.
in that moment.
And if you didn't get to that part in the process, and I know for some families they're waiting and say, well, we haven't even had a phone call yet. It,
Mm,
again, it's the same feelings. It's the same not being chosen. But I liked what you said, Kim, about not comparing qualifications or checking boxes. She's really coming at this from a, a level of, um, I don't know, some type of instinct, some type of
mhm,
feeling, some type of connection. She's
mhm,
saying, do I feel comfortable choosing them for my child? Can I picture my child in their lives? Does this feel right? And even deeper than that, she's trying to choose someone that is helping her to feel like she's going to be able to follow through with that. And so, adoption's a big ask. It's a huge decision. It is a huge selfless decision. She is entrusting to you the most precious thing anyone can entrust us with, her child. And so she's really looking for that peace in her heart.
mhm. And, it's important to point out that for every successful adoption, a birth mom had to go through multiple families. Usually, birth moms have a choice. They're
Hmm.
given a variety of families
Hmm.
to read through, look at, watch videos, even talk to. So, this is a normal part of the process. It is a normal feeling to have, feeling a little bit of pain or rejection in this moment. And I love that we're talking about this because we're talking more about the birth mother's perspective so that people can be less likely to personalize this,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we don't want to add a layer of hurt onto, you know, the path that brought a family here in the first place.
Hmm.
Just kind of
Right.
like we were talking about in our episode recently, our last episode, when we were talking about is it okay to say no to a birth mom? And we were like, please don't reject a
Don't.
birth mom who meets
Yeah.
all your requirements and is
Right.
interested in you and has said, I want to choose you for my baby. Please don't reject her.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about that. And yeah, it almost feels like a double standard, right?
Hmm.
A little bit. Um, but what brought you here and what brought her here, although imperfect in most cases, they're two different things. And when I imagine a birth mom choosing a family and what magnetizes her and compels her to a family, I just have a feeling that it's a deep well of her life experience
Right.
that culminates in this moment, this gut feeling, almost like In my life, I would call it spiritual discernment, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's akin to, if it's not, it is akin to a spiritual discerning that draws her to a family.
Mhm. Mhm. And and I like that. I like you said gut feeling because when we talk to these moms and ask what what was it? What was it that made you choose this family? Often those decisions are made on exactly what you said, and they come across as a gut feeling or a feeling of connection, a feeling of comfort or something really small. Something
Hmm.
you might never think of, but something that they connected with in some way.
Yeah, and it can be a familiarity that she saw in you. Maybe you remind her of someone she trusts, or maybe it was that, and this is not, you're not at fault for this, but maybe you reminded her of someone she had a negative experience with, and you were totally lovely on the phone, and you're a totally fine person and lovely and will be great parents. But for her, it just reminded her of something in her life that didn't go well. So that
Which
trust is also, she's looking for that.
Right, and that's something that none of us can control.
We
N
can't control
n
that.
None of us. In
Hmm.
fact, I remember Kim. I was at an event. It was like a monthly event for Christian women, and I had met a number of the women there, and there was one that I hadn't met, and it was kind of I I thought that our paths just hadn't crossed yet. So but I knew enough about her, so I went up and I introduced myself. And she said, and she introduced herself, was very kind, and said, now, who do you work for? And I explained that I worked in adoption, and she burst into tears. And I said, I'm sorry. No, she said, I remember I wasn't going to come and talk to you. I'm like, "Oh gosh." You know,
Oh,
what what was
I get it. Hmm.
and it was because she had never had children, she had not adopted. She had made the decision, at some point in her life that she wasn't going to pursue that, and she was at a place in the last few months, obviously, that she was very regretful of that. And she had heard me introduce myself at some point in this and had made the decision. She didn't even want to meet me or talk to me, nothing to do with me personally, but because she didn't want to be reminded or have to talk about or have to acknowledge these feelings that were coming up for her. You know, Now certainly when someone says, "Yeah, I didn't want to talk to you," you can take that as a personal rejection, but obviously in this case, it had nothing to do with me personally. It had to do with what I did professionally that she did not want to engage with. And I think it's just kind of similar to what we're talking about here. If you remind someone of something they may have had a negative relationship with, it's nothing you can control. Absolutely nothing you can control. But those connections, when they do come, often it's because she has seen something that she does connect with. And, maybe it's your life. Maybe you have a rural life or an urban life. Maybe it's your career choice. Maybe I mean, it can be any number of things. Maybe it's the number of kids you have because it is the same she grew up with. Or maybe it's because you don't have kids because she wants her child to be the first. It can just be some ease that she feels with your story, or when it's not you, an ease she feels with someone else's life. And it it just sometimes it's just hard to put a finger on.
Hmm. It can be even as basic as the way you come across your communication
Sure.
style, and not that you should change that or modify that, because what a moving target that would be.
Right.
We're not all the right fit for every person.
Hmm.
If you're a married couple, you discovered that during the dating, the courting, the singleness phase. You realized, like, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. professionally as well. We're not everyone's cup of tea, right? And that's okay. It could be about geography. I'm thinking, well, if she sees a family in Arizona, she might be very aware that that's hot. She's like, it's too hot there. Or she might
Right,
be like, I love Arizona because a lot of the year it's 70 degrees and the child can run around and play. And yeah, maybe there's a couple months of heat, but there's no snow or natural disaster there. Or
right,
she might say, like, I don't really want a family in Vermont because of the long winters. It could be anything. It really could be anything. And it can be, kind of hard to put your finger on. You might not get that answer too. So I think that's important to prepare yourself for. She might not give a specific reason, or your agency may not realize why she went in a different direction, but she just went in a different direction. And it might not even be something she could fully explain.
right. And that's the hardest part, I think, for families is there isn't usually a clear, logical answer about why haven't we been chosen? Why haven't we piqued somebody's interest? Over the years, Kim, I've also heard sometimes that, if agencies would take less families, then maybe the older, longer waiting ones would be chosen. But my experience is that's not the case. Because if a mom is looking for something specific and doesn't find it, she's not going to settle. It doesn't
Mm,
mean she's going to pick one of what you have. She will go elsewhere. I I know that. I've witnessed that time and again. So it isn't just about numbers. In fact, it's rarely about numbers. And that's again, I know that's so hard to hear when you are in that season of waiting, but that's the reality is you're waiting for a connection. And it doesn't mean that you aren't enough. It doesn't mean that you don't have a beautiful life and family and future to offer a child, not at all. It it just means that of the women that are seeing you, whether it's your website or your printed profile, whatever, the ones that have seen you haven't yet made that connection with you.
hmm And it also doesn't mean that another family was better,
Mm,
right? Like there's no good, better, best in the ranking of adoptive parents in waiting. A birth mom is looking for a fit, a connection, feels right, gut instinct. They're the ones. She has a moment when she's like, this feels right. I'm at peace with this. And as I mentioned before, not everyone is everyone's cup of tea.
mhm,
Totally fine. Um, Heather, sometimes, well, I think there are actually a lot of families out there that think our qualifications will prove to an agency and to a birth mom, let's give evidence that
right.
we will provide a better life, the best life. And if you talk with an adoption professional, if you talk with an agency, like when I hop on the phone,
Mhm,
someone calls in and they're like, I have adoption questions.
mhm,
And I hop on the phone, sometimes they start telling you all their qualifications, such as we have X amount of square footage, we vacation in these certain places, we make this X amount of money, which is a large income, we have this extra other home that we live in
mhm,
as well. We have XYZ, right? All these things, a boat, multiple cars. I have this career, I have these accomplishments. This is probably one of the very rarest times in your life when those things aren't what it's riding on. Agencies actually don't ask you about, maybe a home study will. A home study provider might ask you for your assets and your income and all
mhm.
that stuff
Right,
because they're verifying your stability, right?
right.
But when it comes to an agency actually discerning, could we help you? Are you a family that we feel confident birth moms would gravitate toward, right? They're not asking you how many boats you have, how many cars you have, what you drive. whether your neighborhood is gated or not, if you live in the area with the best schools. Why does every profile say that they live in the area with the best schools? But it's really not about that. We
Yeah,
see birth moms as they view profiles. There can be 8 families that live in these beautiful neighborhoods, and she picks the one in the modest home.
right,
Something about that family clicked for her.
right. And you know, I think we could do a whole nother episode on why people are chosen, but I
I'll write
think
that down. I'm sure people want to know. They're probably after last week's episode and this one, they're probably like,
yeah,
these girls are the most negative.
but and to your point, Kim, we've also, had families tell us because of all of the things they can list, why why wouldn't we be picked? Why haven't we been picked? Look at our lives. Look at how we have everything lined up. And and I agree with you. You've built a beautiful life. You have built a successful life. You've built a loving, supportive home and marriage and family, but I'm not the one choosing. The expectant mom is the one choosing. It's her child. It's her child's life. And in modern adoption today, she gets to choose. And so being chosen, it's not about having the biggest so that you can win the prize. It's just not. It's about one very specific relationship with one very specific woman that is making a connection that she will feel strong enough in making this selfless decision for. I mean,
Mhm,
that's just what it boils down to. And you know, over the years, I mean, I could tell story after story of you know things I've heard from families, things I've heard from birth parents. But but this is really what it all boils down to is that it's about the one woman choosing you for the right reasons.
mhm. And it's all about the right fit. I
Mhm.
love a moment when I can remind people, or maybe not remind them, but help them see that every adoption story is as unique as your fingerprint.
Yeah.
There are no two identical adoption stories.
Mhm.
And I absolutely love that. I'm in awe of that. And so it really comes down to that right fit.
It does. And I would encourage you if what we've said so far resonates with you, you're feeling like, yes, I'm there, I'm here. I would encourage you to really try to reframe how you are seeing this. You know, when you are not chosen, it does not mean you have been rejected. Not at all. It's because a mom found the right fit. Doesn't mean you were the wrong fit. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean you were a bad fit. It just means she found the right fit. It's kind of like, this is probably a horrible analogy, but it's kind of like if you're buying a pair of shoes, you know, and you try on a few different shoes. You choose one and you buy it. Why did you choose that one? Well, because it fit well. It was comfortable. It was, whatever the characteristics of it were, you felt it was the right one for you. Did that mean that the others you didn't choose were bad or were wrong or that you are rejecting them based on, you know, uh, any number of characters? No, they just weren't the right ones. You're
Right.
looking for something. You had something in mind, something you need, something you want, and you chose the one that was the best fit for you at that time. And so, again, it's really important to, I think it's really important to frame this in a way that can keep this positive, because I know the waiting, it is the hardest part of adoption, and it is very easy to go into a dark place and be discouraged. But I think how we need to try to think of that is that you're not waiting to be chosen because you're the best. You're waiting for the one situation that clicks, where there's a mutual sense of this is it. This is who I want for
Hmm.
my baby, and this is the the mother that's chosen us, and she's just right.
Hmm. Exactly. And that's the moment everyone is searching for and waiting for. I think there are many moments when you encounter this in your life on the path to adopting. There are things in every season in life where it needs to be the right fit. And Heather, I love that you said, this is probably a terrible analogy because I say that a lot too. I try to sense whether a family is going to be okay with an analogy I might give.
Mhm.
But when you said, I was literally thinking that when you said that because I was thinking of another analogy. Do you remember? I don't know. There's a movie called La La Land, and it's about an aspiring actress in Hollywood, and she goes to a casting call. Okay. And she walks into the hall where everyone is lined up in chairs waiting to be called into the casting. And they all fit the bill. Someone literally said, I'm just going to make this up, I'm looking for a woman with sandy blonde hair, mid 20s, 5'6", slim build, oval face, cute smile, and freckles. And 50 people, 50 women showed up. And that's kind of how it is a little bit, right? A birth mom is going to say, I want a married couple, I want a Christian family, kids, no kids, or I'm okay with singles. I want them to have a dog, or I want them to not have a dog. I want them to have brown hair, or I don't care about their hair. They could have no hair. Being bald isn't going to stop you, by the way, if you're wondering that. um, and then she looks at them, but she may already be measuring it against a vision and a feeling she has in her mind's eye, kind of like a casting director. And the moment that the right one walks through the door, they just feel this is what we had in mind. And it doesn't mean there was anything wrong with the other 49 lovely women that met all the qualifications, and they'll have their moment too if they just keep trying. And it kind of reminds me of that, this
Yep,
conversation. It feels almost maybe like a similar type of rejection, right?
definitely.
And like Heather said, try not to stay in those negative feelings. It's good to acknowledge. That's why we're doing this
Mhm.
episode and talking about this on Let's Talk Adoption. This is one of those moments that doesn't get talked about very often at
Right.
all. People expect you to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and dust yourself off. And obviously, adoption can be hard, right? Everyone knows adoption isn't, well, maybe you're discovering adoption isn't easy by listening to this podcast. But people generally understand that adoption is a process and it's not always easy, and there are going to be moments that are hard. And maybe a lot of hard moments brought you here. And I would just say find comfort. Find comfort in your faith in knowing that the Lord has his plan for you and he has this amazing answer to your prayer on the way. So
Yep.
don't stay in the negative. Give it to God, like we always say, sometimes easier said than done. But do the things that you know you need to do to, recover from that moment of rejection and that painful feeling. And that's okay to acknowledge it, but just don't stay there.
And I think, Kim, something that I want to mention is sometimes these thoughts and feelings can be brought up, intensified, any number of words there, after you have friends and family
Mm,
asking, is there any update? What's going on? Have you heard anything? And families can get weary of asking that. And sometimes family members will say, well, why aren't you getting picked? Or maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe you went with the wrong, agency or attorney or whatever adoption professional you're with. Um, and sometimes those conversations can start kind of a downward spiral. They can make you question what is wrong with us? Why haven't we been picked? And it kind of, again, these this can be a place of that ebbs and flows depending on what's going on. So one thing you can do is kind of have some prepared answers ahead of time. We don't know the future, but we trust the Lord's in control. He
Hmm.
knows the child he has for our families. Uh, Things like that, so that whatever you say or hear, you can keep yourself and your mind a little elevated and not, going downhill quickly. And one of the reasons I want to say that, because so often we hear from families after they've adopted, they look back and they say, now we know why we waited this long. Now we know why those others didn't work out. Now we know whatever, because this was the child for us. This was the mom for us. She fits so perfectly. Everything. You can see that so clearly looking back if you
Hmm.
stay the course, but you don't always have the ability to see it when you're in the midst of it. So, what do you do? What do you do with those feelings when you're there, when you're feeling, why weren't we picked?
Hmm.
Why did she talk to us and ghost us? Why is this taking so long? What do you do with those feelings?
Right. And while you were saying that, I was thinking sometimes it's not a rejection of you at all. It could be just that she chose to parent
Right?
and it had nothing to do with you, right? But I would say to answer your question first, let yourself feel those feelings. And it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to feel like maybe even your pride took a little bit of a hit, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think it's important, though, as you do feel those, to not let that disappointment
Mhm.
turn into self-doubt, turn into suddenly a series of questioning everything you've done to this. Was it right? Was it wrong? Did I, no, don't do that. Feel the feelings, but don't don't stay in a dark place.
You know what helped me
Mm,
recently? Get in the shower and say out loud all the things you're thankful for.
yeah.
Literally, the sun, the trees, air, the fact that I got to have a dog in my lifetime, my house, my friends, my teeth, my parents, my dad. What a great dad I got to have. The Bible. Let all the things that you're thankful for just come out loud. You try it. Just try it. Remember this for later and try it. I promise you, there's no way. There's no way you can stay in a dark place when you train your brain to acknowledge all the good in your life, all the ways that God provided for you.
And that also is a way to remind you and your subconscious of what is true.
Hmm.
And that's so important. You're ready to be parents. That's something to be grateful for. There's probably a time in your life where you knew you weren't quite ready to be a parent, but you've done all the things to be parents through adoption. You've taken the steps, you've fulfilled the requirements. That alone is something to be grateful for. So reminding yourself of what is true, and then don't stop there. Keep moving forward. Every time, every day that your profile is shown and is visible, that's another opportunity for the right connection. So while yesterday it didn't work out, today's a new chance.
Hmm.
And reminding yourself of that is so very important.
There's that song, I Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. It's a
Mm-hmm.
country song.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sometimes the things that don't work out, in fact, I would say almost always the things that don't work out are actually protecting you from something that wasn't the right fit. It wasn't going to be good for you, and the right thing is on the way.
Right. See, now I thought you were going to say, that song, God Bless the Broken Road. But there's another one too.
No, sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. I don't know.
No,
I might be mixing up an old Randy
no, no,
Travis
no.
song with the melody.
No, there's
He
a there's
goes
a
to a
Garth
game,
there's a
he sees
Garth
the
Brooks
girl he
song.
wanted. He sees the girl he wanted, but then he was like, "Oh no, but my life now is amazing."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he goes to a football game or something at his old high school and he runs
I don't
into
know, but
his
obviously there's a lot of songs that fit this space. So apparently go find a few good songs.
No,
But
that's the fastest way to be bawling your eyes out, I
that's
think.
true.
Country music gets me just all in my emotions. Do the shower thing instead.
But I think at the end of the day, if you are in this place right now, if you're waiting, if you're wondering, if you're questioning, if you're worrying, I think our message to you is this. Just because you weren't chosen doesn't mean you were overlooked. Just because you haven't been matched doesn't mean you've been passed by. It it just means you haven't made the right connection yet.
That's right. And I think it was Mary Kay, when I used to be a Mary Kay lady a long time ago, we were trained from the Mary Kay way that every no is a one step closer to the yes.
Right.
And that is something I kept with me. And you're still in the process of finding the right connection. Your
Hmm.
story is in progress. That birth mom that chose a different thing has nothing to do with you. Period. You're still in progress. And the right connection is just one yes away.
Right. That's a great way to end it right there. I love that. The connection is one yes away.
Hmm.
Thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Let's Talk Adoption podcast. We hope you subscribe. If you have feedback, if you have ideas, if you have guest ideas, if you just want to shoot us a note saying that something resonated with you, you can go to our website, letstalkadoption.com. There's a form there you can fill out. We'd love to hear from you. We would love to answer questions. In fact, that's going to be an upcoming episode is answering listener questions. I love those and I'm super excited for that. So again, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we will talk to you next time on Let's Talk Adoption.